Greetings, dear viewers. You've tuned into The Price of Cheating, a channel dedicated to those who cherish traditional family values and condemn infidelity. Be sure to subscribe as we explore matters of love and loyalty. Let's get started. The elegant room was alive with conversation, accompanied by the soft clink of glasses. The business event was in full swing, the air buzzing with energy. I found myself caught up in the flow, laughing and mingling with friends, completely immersed in the vibrant atmosphere. It felt like one of those rare moments of perfection where everything falls into place effortlessly. A couple of drinks had loosened me up, making me more open, more carefree. The hum of the crowd heightened my excitement. On the outskirts, however, stood Victor, my husband, quietly observing from a distance. Social gatherings had never been his strength. He was a man of simple pleasures, preferring the tranquility of a quiet evening over the chaos of such events. Yet, swept up in the whirlwind of the night, I hardly noticed the solitude, or perhaps I chose to ignore it. The group's mood shifted into a playful one, tossing around light-hearted jabs. Someone joked about how men were always under their wives' control, and without thinking, I joined in. My laughter was loud, exaggerated, too much. Then, I went even further. A careless comment about Victor slipped from my lips, sharp and stinging. The words hung in the air, cutting deeper than I realized at the time. My friends erupted in laughter, feeding my misplaced sense of triumph. For a fleeting moment, I reveled in the attention, oblivious to the damage I had caused. But now, as I replay that moment in my mind, I see it all too clearly. Victor's posture stiffened, his face shadowed with hurt. His shoulders drooped under the weight of my betrayal. Yet, in that instant, I was too caught up in the group's amusement to notice the harm I had inflicted. Then the atmosphere changed. Victor moved toward me, his steps deliberate, his demeanor unsteady. The lively chatter around us seemed to fade, leaving only the thrum of my heartbeat. I greeted him with a forced smile, hoping he would overlook my words as he often did. But his calm expression hid something deeper, an inner storm brewing behind his eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost too quiet to hear, but his words cut through the noise like a blade. "It's over." He turned and walked away, leaving those two words hanging in the air like an irreversible sentence. My world tilted as the weight of his statement hit me. The room, still alive with laughter and chatter, felt distant, like a scene from a play I no longer belonged to. My breath caught and my body froze. I wanted to chase after him, take back my cruel words, beg for forgiveness, but guilt anchored me to the spot. The others around me remained unaware that my world had just unraveled. I stood there, paralyzed, replaying the moment in my mind, the laughter, the careless joke, the fleeting validation I had savored. Each detail deepened my regret. In my selfish pursuit of attention, I had shattered something precious. Victor was gone, and with him, the life we had built together. Though the evening continued around me, I was lost in a whirlwind of regret, haunted by the realization that my thoughtlessness had cost me everything. I dissected every second of that fateful moment, painfully aware of how I had become the very person I never wanted to be. The kind of person who could betray their loved one in such a heartless, public way. But it hadn't always been like this. I hadn't always been like this. Before that night, I was a different person, someone who would never have imagined hurting Victor, let alone in such a cruel manner. I had once loved him deeply and without reservation. Our story began on a rainy afternoon in a cozy cafe. I had been rushing as usual, juggling too many things, when I accidentally spilled coffee all over myself. Embarrassed and flustered, I fumbled to clean up the mess. That's when Victor stepped in. He didn't make any grand gestures or try to impress me. He simply handed me a napkin with a gentle smile and offered to help. His calm presence caught me off guard. His quiet strength disarmed me, unlike the loud, attention-seeking men I was used to. I was accustomed to Victor's quiet demeanor, which felt like a breath of fresh air. Our first date was just as unpretentious. We took a walk in the park, talking for hours and sharing pieces of our lives. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen, not as the person others expected me to be, but as my true self. Victor's calm nature and his ability to listen without judgment drew me in completely. As we grew closer, I discovered a man with modest ambition and a deep sense of purpose. He dreamed of starting his own business, not for fame or fortune, but to create a life of independence and meaning. I admired his patience, his ability to find joy in the journey rather than in the destination. He grounded me in a way I had never experienced before. I hadn't realized I needed a rainy day, much like the one when we first met. I knew I loved him. We had planned to go out, but the weather kept us indoors instead. We spent the day curled up on the couch, eating takeout and watching old movies. As I looked at him, his face lit with an unguarded smile, I felt a deep, quiet happiness. It wasn't a fiery passion or infatuation, but a steady, comforting love that made me feel safe. A year later, we married in a small, intimate ceremony. As we exchanged vows, I believed every word with all my heart. We promised to face life's challenges together, no matter what came our way. But somewhere along the line, I let those promises slip through my fingers. Perhaps I lost sight of who I used to be. Maybe the downfall of our relationship wasn't solely his fault or mine. As life became more complicated, the bond we shared began to weaken. Victor's business, despite his persistent efforts, struggled to take off. That tension seeped into our lives. Meanwhile, my career thrived. I soared through the corporate world, working endless hours, attending every networking event, and chasing an insatiable hunger for recognition and validation. Success became my obsession, and in my pursuit of it, I lost sight of Victor. Victor remained constant, kind, patient, and unwavering in his support. But I had completely transformed. The woman he had once married faded away, replaced by someone harsher, more critical, and relentlessly demanding. I demanded more money, more success, and more admiration. In my relentless climb, I neglected the most precious part of my life. Gradually, I began to see Victor not as a man I had once admired, but as someone who lacked the ambition and drive I wrongly equated with worth. It's hard to admit now, but my perception of him grew cruel. The very calm and steady nature that had once drawn me to him became a source of frustration. I wanted him to be someone different, someone who mirrored my own aggression, shared my hunger for achievement, and chased success with the same intensity. But that wasn't who Victor was. Instead of appreciating him for the qualities that made him unique, I criticized him for not becoming more like me. My dissatisfaction revealed itself in subtle ways. At first, I made offhand remarks or gentle suggestions that he should do more. But those comments grew sharper and more biting over time. What began as sarcasm evolved into cutting humor, and eventually, I found myself openly belittling him, even in front of others. The escalation was so gradual that I didn't realize how far it had gone until it was too late. Reflecting on it now, I wonder if my behavior was a defense mechanism, an attempt to hide my own insecurities by projecting them onto him. I became consumed with presenting an image of power and success. Somehow, I convinced myself that putting Victor down would elevate me, but all it did was expose my own cruelty. I often think back to the person I used to be, the woman who loved Victor for his authenticity, who valued him for more than his accomplishments. That woman is gone, replaced by someone else. I barely recognize the person I became, the one who said things that can never be unsaid. The breakdown of our relationship wasn't sudden. It was a slow, creeping change, so subtle that I can't pinpoint the exact moment admiration turned into resentment. I replayed it in my mind over and over, searching for that turning point, but it wasn't a single decision to hurt him. It was a gradual decay, a poison that silently spread through the cracks in our bond. The truth is, my insecurities fueled it all. As my career reached new heights, I became the version of myself I had always dreamed of being: respected, successful, envied. I thrived on the attention my accomplishments brought. Yet, with every step forward, Victor seemed to remain unchanged. He found contentment in his small business and his steady pace, indifferent to society's standards of success. At first, I admired his quiet determination, but over time, admiration turned to frustration. Why wasn't he striving for more? Why didn't he match my drive? My thoughts became consumed with comparisons. At work events, I was surrounded by ambitious, high-powered individuals who radiated confidence as they discussed lucrative deals and grand expansions. I found myself longing for that same energy in Victor. It was an unfair expectation, but at the time, it only deepened my dissatisfaction. His contentment felt like a reflection of my own fears and insecurities. The first time I made a cutting remark was almost accidental. At a dinner party, someone asked about Victor's business, and before he could respond, I made a joke about his relaxed pace. It drew laughter, even from Victor, though his smile faltered slightly. That moment gave me a brief sense of power. By putting him down, I felt momentarily elevated. It became a pattern, offhand comments cloaked in humor that little by little chipped away at him. Victor never retaliated. He laughed along, made a self-deprecating comment, and moved on. But in private, I saw the weight it carried. He grew quieter, and his once easy laughter began to fade. I told myself it was stress, but deep down I knew better. I was driving a wedge between us, and he was pulling away. Even as I saw his pain, I didn't stop. I couldn't. My insecurities had taken control, and no achievement ever seemed enough to fill the emptiness inside me. I used Victor as a scapegoat, projecting my own feelings of inadequacy onto him. Belittling him gave me fleeting relief, but it left lasting damage. My words grew sharper, my criticisms more pointed. I questioned his decisions, accused him of being lazy or unmotivated, especially about our future. The first time I openly called him out, the hurt in his eyes was unmistakable. For a brief moment, I hesitated, but instead of apologizing, I doubled down, convincing myself that I was being honest, that my words were a form of tough love. But they weren't. They were a manifestation of my own flaws and fears. Now, all I have left is a memory of who I once was, and the painful realization of what I've lost. I always knew deep down, though I tried to deny it. Each time his silence stretched longer, every moment the light in his eyes dimmed further, I felt it unmistakably. I was hurting him. Yet I couldn't stop. It gave me a twisted sense of control, a hollow illusion of power that distracted me from the chaos within. I told myself I was the one holding everything together, but in truth, I was unraveling and dragging Victor down with me. Looking back, I see with painful clarity that I had become toxic. My insecurities and fears had transformed me into someone I barely recognized, someone who built themselves up by tearing others down. Victor's love had always been steady, patient, and unconditional, but I was too blinded by my own turmoil to appreciate it. Worse, I didn't realize how much damage I was causing until it was far too late. By the time I understood the weight of my actions, the harm was irreparable. I had pushed him away, piece by piece, and I had no one to blame but myself. I assumed Victor was unshakable, that his calm and forgiving nature would endure no matter how harsh my words became. But everyone has limits, and I didn't see his until I shattered them. Slowly but surely, I wore him down, and by the time I noticed he was nearly gone, it was already over when he finally broke. It shattered us both. There was no dramatic argument, no yelling, no tears. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening. We sat across from each other at the dinner table, and the silence between us was as heavy and oppressive as it had become over the past months, maybe even years. I can't remember what we were eating, but I'll never forget the weight of that moment. That day, I had come home tired and irritated after another long day at work, a place where I felt valued and significant. Victor had cooked dinner as he often did, and instead of showing gratitude, I made a dismissive comment about how he must have too much free time. He didn't respond. He rarely did anymore. He just sat there, staring at his plate, and moving the food around absent-mindedly. The silence suffocated me, so I broke it the only way I knew how, with another jab. I made a cutting remark about how his business might do better if he spent less time in the kitchen. The exact words escape me now, but I remember the tone, sharp, mocking, designed to wound. Victor usually deflected such comments with a self-deprecating joke or a change of subject, but this time he didn't. Instead, he set his fork down and looked at me. His expression was one I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't anger, as I had expected. No snapping, no yelling, no fighting back. It was quiet resignation. "I can't do this anymore," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. At first, I didn't grasp what he meant. His words weren't dramatic or loud. They were calm, deliberate, and devastating. They chilled me. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. "You can't do it anymore," he repeated. He met my gaze, truly looked at me for the first time in years. His eyes reflected exhaustion, pain, and deep sorrow. "I hadn't noticed before," he said, gesturing between us. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine. It's not. It hasn't been for a long time." A wave of panic rose in my chest, but I tried to push it down. "Don't be ridiculous," I thought. "Victor," I said, clinging to control, "we're just going through a rough patch." "Everyone does." He shook his head slowly. "This isn't a rough patch, Anna. It's something broken, and I don't think I know how to fix it." I opened my mouth to argue, to plead, but he silenced me with a look. "You've been pushing me away for years," he continued, his voice heavy with weariness. I kept holding on, thinking it would get better, that we'd find our way back. But every time I tried, you shut me out. You made me feel small, and I can't do it anymore. His words hit me like a blow. This wasn't how I imagined it. I had always thought that if we fell apart, it would end with shouting, tears, and eventually reconciliation. But there was no anger in his voice, only defeat. "You don't mean that," I said, my voice trembling. "We can fix this. We just need more time." He shook his head again. "We've had time, years of it, and this is where it's brought us." Desperation surged through me. "Victor, I'm sorry," I blurted out, the words feeling foreign and awkward. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just frustrated, but we can work through this. Can't we?" For a moment, I thought he might relent, but then he shook his head once more. His eyes were filled with sadness. "I don't think I have anything left to give." The silence that followed was unbearable. All the control, all the power I had clung to so fiercely, slipped through my fingers in an instant. "I love you, Anna," he said quietly, "but love isn't enough anymore. Not when it's so one-sided." I wanted to beg him to stay, to promise change, but the words wouldn't come. After years of pretending I didn't need him, that I was stronger without him, I no longer knew how to ask for forgiveness. He stood, his movements slow and deliberate. "I'll stay at my brother's for a while," he said, avoiding my gaze. "We both need some space." And then he was gone. The soft click of the door echoed in the suffocating quiet of a house that suddenly felt too empty. I sat there, staring at the empty chair, replaying the moment over and over. I had pushed him too far, too many times, and now he was gone. I had no one to blame but myself. I had driven him away with my bitterness, my need for control, and my fear of vulnerability. I thought I was strong and independent, but sitting alone in the silence, I realized how fragile I truly was. Victor had been my anchor, the best part of me, and now he was gone forever.